Hi everyone, Teddy Baldassarre with TeddyBaldassarre.com. In this video, we're looking at a watch from Hamilton with the Hamilton Intra-Matic chronograph in blue. So in this video and on this channel, we cover watches available for purchase on our website, TeddyBaldassarre.com, as a full authorized dealer. So in this video, deep dive into this timepiece, final points of consideration at the end, but also throughout this video, if you have further questions, check out the link in the description to the product page where you can learn more, purchase the watch, and book a time with one of our dedicated watch specialists as well. But guys, let's jump into the video, take a closer look at this watch. Over the last 5 to 10 years, the watch collecting market has demonstrated a healthy appetite for vintage-inspired designs, which in turn has forced many brands to look back at their own historical catalog. For many watch companies, there's a balance to being on brand with aesthetics, the movement, and messaging in a very competitive and challenging retail environment. Hamilton has effectively demonstrated over the years that their dedication to value for money is a key component to their brand positioning. So when they introduced the Hamilton Intra-Matic 68 chronograph back in 2017 as a limited edition piece, they received a strong praise for the effort. Since then, the collection has grown into a selection of non-limited edition models in a few different case sizes, with the option between a manual winding movement or an automatic movement option now being available in 2022. But today we're going to look at one of the best values in chronographs that you can pick up with the Intra-Matic chronograph, with this one coming in a blue dial configuration. With the Intra-Matic chronograph on the wrist, let's take a look at the case dimensions. Starting with a reasonable diameter of 40 millimeters, a lug-to-lug distance of 49 millimeters, and a case height of 14.3 millimeters thick. Vintage influence is clearly demonstrated in the design of the case, from the thin angled bezel and flared geometric lugs that comes together as one for one of the more attractive designs in the price category. Now, I think there's so much going for this watch, but one of the common criticisms that I see mentioned is going to be some of the wearing dimensions. Now, I think this wears pretty true to a 40 millimeter case, if not a 40.5 millimeter case. The other question is thickness. So thickness on this watch, yes, it is not a thin watch on the wrist, but given the value architecture inside, but it's going to be 8 millimeters thick alone just for that movement, I think getting this to around 14.3 millimeters thick doesn't make this watch feel out of place on the wrist. Certainly is not going to slide underneath all dress cuffs out there if you have a tight one, but still is not going to disrupt you in day-to-day wear. The lug-to-lug dimension, I find, is not going to wear necessarily true to size completely. I think it wears a little bit more compact than what that 49 millimeters will indicate, but still overall wears closer to that of a 40 to 40.5 millimeter case, so pretty on par with that proposed dimension. Stylistically, the case exhibits a heavy dose of vintage influence, primarily with the thin and angular geometry of the lugs and bezel, as well as along the case sides. Every case surface is finely polished, and case edges, while crisp and well defined, are slightly rounded off, giving the case some dressier character. Along the left side of the case, we find even more vintage influence with the extended pump pushers and the oversized screw down crown, which engages the Valjoux 7753 or Hamilton H31 movement inside. This is slightly different movement execution in regards to crown functionality compared to the widely used Valjoux 7750, where here there's no second position to advance the date. Instead, these movements require a stylus to adjust the case corrector found at the 10 o'clock case position. Otherwise, the crown operates in straightforward fashion. First, you unscrew the crown to the first position to hand wind the movement, and then extend it all the way out to the furthest point to adjust the time, while featuring hacking seconds here. When the crown is screwed back into the case, the Intra-Matic has a nice water-resistant capability of 100 meters for a chronograph. No surprises with the chronograph operation either, as the top pusher starts and stops the chronograph mechanism, while the bottom button resets the complication back to 0. With the cam heart and lever style of the chronograph module this Hamilton H31 used, and the length of the pump style pusher, it requires some pressure to properly activate the start, stop, and reset functions. One other point when adjusting that date mechanism, very similar to a regular date, but given how it's going to be activated with the use of a stylus, try not to adjust the date between the hours of 9 p.m. to around 3 a.m. This is going to prevent any damage to the mechanism for that date. Installed on this particular model between the 20 millimeter lugs is a casual chestnut brown leather strap with an orangish brown pipe stitching along the entire outside edge. There is some stiff padding along the top half of the strap that will take some time to break in, but overall I think the strap is well done. But this is also in a range where you probably have some higher expectations for the strap. It's going to be paired with your $2,000 $2,000 watch. So despite it being solid, I don't know if it's necessarily on par with a $2,000 watch. The strap does taper to a nice polished 18mm pin buckle with the signed logo across the top, and with the 20 to 18mm taper of the strap, there's a lot of opportunity to go with third-party straps, and I certainly would recommend that if you are looking to get the most out of this watch. Transitioning back over to the dome sapphire crystal, we are provided a clear view of the excellent bicompax design of the dial below. Now, Hamilton offers this model in a handful of dial color configurations, including the ever popular Panda style dials, with the popular blue variant here with the accenting ecru subdials and tachometer scale. Hamilton's choice of a more muted color works well here, and this may be one of the most interesting colors currently being offered within the Intra-Matic automatic chronograph collection. Starting with the tachometer scale along the outboard edge of the dial, the stark black printed text is larger than we typically see on these scales, especially with the vintage reissues. And I ultimately think going big here really benefits the overall design. Moving inward, we have faceted high polish applied markers for the hours. They're supplied with bright white lume plots along the outward facing edge of each marker. Pairing well with the dial markers are polished sword style hour and minute hands that also contain lume, and finishing up the handset is a thin white chronograph second hand. The quality and application of the lume is quite good, glowing with more vibrance and consistency than expected for the model, but the surface area in which it is applied is going to be limited, so please keep that in mind. Several different dial details can be picked up among the dial elements and design, and one clear example is with the center set chronograph second hand with its slightly bend to trace the slight curvature of the dial along the edge, a nicely placed detail. The horizontal bidirectional layout of the chronograph also helps capture the essence of the vintage racing chronographs from the 1950s and 60s. The contrasting ecru along with the fine circular texture to each subdial pairs well with the navy blue color. In terms of the chronograph layout, at the 3 o'clock you have your 30-minute elapsed time subdial, and at the 9 o'clock you have your constant sweep second, both of which feature black print and black hands. Above the 6 o'clock lume plot, we have the larger than average date window with a simple border printed in white highlighting the aperture, and matches the white chronograph second hand as well as the limited dial text. Located just below the 12 o'clock hour marker is the vintage Hamilton logo, and printed between the handset and the date window at 6, the simple word automatic, referencing the Hamilton H31 caliber within. So as we flip this watch over, we find a dome screw down case back that covers up that Hamilton H31 inside and helps aid this watch's 100 meters of water resistant capabilities. As Hamilton is part of this watch group, they have preferential access to ETA-based movements, and as I mentioned before, this H31 is based off the ETA Valjoux 7753, a prolific chronograph caliber that has been reworked and improved through a series of modifications to the gear train and balance assembly that has enabled this watch to jump up from 42 hours to 60 hours with the power reserve. One other point when looking at the Valjoux 7753 base compared to the 7750, the positioning of those sub-registers. Here is going to have a horizontal display rather than the vertical display of the 7750. Even though we can't see the movements finishing, Hamilton has gone through the process of decorating some of the backside surfaces, including on the rotor as well as on the bridge directly beneath it. Unlike some other movements that are utilized from Hamilton, the beat frequency is going to remain at 4 Hz or 28,800 vibrations per hour, yet still manages to get that extended power reserve. So just to unpack here, we're looking at 28,800 vibrations per hour, 4 Hz. It does feature hacking and hand winding. Hacking stop in the second hand when you pull the crown to the farthest position. Has a power reserve of 60 hours. And in terms of accuracy, these are running in the range of 5 to 9 seconds off from perfect time of day when testing dozens of these. Now to unpack, looking at this Hamilton Intra-Matic chronograph in blue. So a few things just kind of going for this watch. I would say with the Hamilton Khaki collection as being the definitive field watch for $500, if I'm looking at what is perhaps the definitive chronograph for around $2,000, if you like this Panda style design, this has to be on a short list. Now, this blue dial configuration is going to perhaps kind of deviate from the norm or the classic vintage elements that a watch like this is going to exude. But for certain people, I think that's going to offer some additional fun. One point in wearability, this is going to wear all of those 40 millimeters, if not a little bit larger at 40.5, but still very wearable. I have no hesitancy in wearing a watch like this on my wrist, and I'm a 6.25 inch wrist. I've looked at these watches extensively in the past, so I definitely recommend checking out some other reviews as well to get some more looks of this piece. Thickness could be a deal breaker for some, but if that's going to be the case, then you're going to have a tough time going for any automatic chronograph in this price range at all, as a result of the thickness of the Valjoux caliber within being 8 millimeters. So to get something that much thinner is going to be difficult. But apart from that, I think the blue dial works with this Panda configuration and is certainly one to look at if you want some color infused within a classic from Hamilton. All right, guys, well, thank you again so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That really does help out the channel. Really would appreciate that as well. But also, if you're in the market for this watch, it is available on TeddyBaldassarre.com. TeddyBaldassarre.com is a full authorized dealer of all the brands that we carry. Quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support. Also offer a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer to give you a lot of peace of mind. In addition, we also offer price matching. So if you see one of our watches for cheaper at another authorized dealer, just fill out the form and we'll get in touch with you. And finally, all this content that we create here helps fund our future productions here on this channel, as well as on our main channel, trying to foster up a new generation of watch enthusiasts in the process. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.